And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Ed Smith. Not good news for the Red Wings, but we also got Pistons, Michigan, and Tigers to talk about. But the Red Wings, they finished strong, but they still get eliminated anyway. They beat the Canadians 5-4 in a shootout, 5-4 in overtime at home before that. But the Caps, with their 2-1 win over the Flyers, they clinched the playoffs. So the Caps have one less regulation loss than the Wings to finish the regular season. The Red Wings are finished their regular season at 41-32-9. The Caps finished at 40-31-11, 31 losses to 32. They both finished with 91 points, but the one less regulation factor does decide the tiebreaker, unfortunately, for the Wings. And they came close. They came a whole lot closer, dangerously close, in fact, than they did last year, the last 2 years. And it's but in the last year, when the first year with head coach Derek Lalonde. So that would be progress to all of us. But the way the Red Wings collapsed in March with that 7-game regulation losing streak with no points, especially with Dylan Larkin suffering a lower body injury, out for a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. But the rest of the team not executing. It after being in third place in the Atlantic Division, that set the tone for this tight race, and the Red Wings did this to themselves.
I 100% agree with you, Taylor. They did this to themselves. The fact that they had a middling record in April when they absolutely did not need to have that, especially after that March that you mentioned where they were struggling all over the place. It took essentially the Flyers, the Pens, and the Capitals collapsing on themselves to even make this scenario possible going into the last game of the season. Now, I will admit, you did have your fair share of clutch heroics. You saw Larkin with the game winner in OT in Toronto. You saw Raymond with the the double decker, I would call it, scoring, tying it up in regulation and winning it in overtime just last night at home. And then what we saw here tonight, even when everything was seemingly thought is lost, the Red Wings hung on. They never stopped fighting. They never quit. And with like about 4 seconds left, on a mere slap shot, David Perron, who of all people, who's been maligned all season with the penalties and the mistakes and everything else, he of all people is the one that tied the game up. And it breathed new life into the Red Wings for just momentarily. Unfortunately, though, it was horrible, awful timing because I guess as soon as it looked apparent that the Red Wings might be losing, that's when Philly, specifically Tortorella, their coach, made the decision to pull the goalkeeper, even though the game was tied with 4 minutes left. And inevitably, that's what essentially handed the game in the playoffs to the Capitals. They scored on an empty netter. Philly couldn't come back, and no matter what the Red Wings were going to do in overtime or in the shootout, as it turned out to be, their season was decided. And really, it comes back to what I was saying. Taking care of business of yourself. I've mentioned it. You've mentioned it. You've mentioned it before. Frank Wagner has mentioned it before. Our other colleague here. You have got to handle business yourself. If you want to see the promised land, you got to take care of business. If you want to make the playoffs, you don't win only 8 games in March. If you want to make the playoffs, you don't squander a critical game at home against the very same team that you're competing for a playoff spot against. Just like with the Lions, they had their hot stretch, 2 years ago, which kickstarted their whole momentum. If they wanted to make the playoffs, they shouldn't have started 1-6. If they wanted to make the playoffs, they shouldn't have had that awful performance against Carolina. But at the end of the day, they still finished the season on their own merit, on their own terms, and with their head as high as possible, even if there was a twinge of disappointment mixed in. But give credit to the Red Wings, like I said, showing endless fight and resolve the entire way through, even up to the literal last second. They did not quit, and I believe making if you make certain changes, revamps to your roster, call up the right players. For the love of God, make some fixes to your defense and get better suitable depth for your goaltending. Um, you could see a situation to where the Red Wings should be expected to make the playoffs next season. I think what we saw this year, where it was frankly the ceiling mark for what Red Wings fans were hoping for, a chance to contend for a wild card spot going into the last few games of the year, and that's exactly what happened. Unfortunately, things did not turn out the way we wanted to, but knowing that you have in place with the players that you've gotten through the draft and through the system that Steve Eisman is trying to build, or I should say replicate, based on what he did in Tampa, that there is optimism for the future. Just like how you felt that same optimism for the Lions, when even though they knew what was going to happen no matter what, they still took care of business and they ended things in Lambeau on their own terms 2 years ago. That's the same type of mood that I got from watching this game tonight with the Red Wings. And frankly, if what we saw as a result of what happened to the Lions as a prelude, then maybe we can be thankful that this happened tonight for the Red Wings.
Yeah, that's what I visualize as too. The Lions in 2020 in the 2022 to 2023 NFL regular season, they came close, and so did the Red Wings. And yeah, and that's about it. So there are some people that are calling for Derek Lalonde's job, but I'd give him at least another year, to be honest, due to the fact that the team came closer, as I mentioned before, than they did last year in Lalonde's first year as head coach. So
as long as you don't have stretches or stretches throughout the season where I'm contemplating, hey, maybe we should pull the plug early, midway through the year, that type of deal, then yeah, Lalonde, in my opinion, has done enough to warrant. Yeah, let's see what he can do for next year as well. It's not the highest of confidence, but like I said, knowing that with the roster that you have in place, it would feel like it would take a complete fool's errand of an effort by an idiot savant to mess this up. So, despite whatever flaws or problems that Lalonde may have or traits that fans may not like, I can still say you have to still admit it's still an upgrade from what we had previously with Blasio. So, we were nowhere near this competitive under Blasio. I do wish we are more, still can be more physical. But you can't complain about what the trajectory is looking like so far when you see how this team has performed the past couple of years versus and compared to what they did just this year.
that's true. So we're going to keep our eyes on them in the offseason, but that's about it for Red Wings right now. The Pistons, they finished their regular season at 14-68. That is the new worst franchise record, at least. General manager Troy Weaver and head coach Monty Williams are staying put, according to Pistons owner Tom Gores. But from what I've heard from the Pistons organization in a statement letter, they are looking for a new president of basketball operations.
That is correct. Apparently, Tom Gores still wants to be in the mood of having his cake and eating it too. Instead of not admitting, hey, this was not the right decision or whatever. At the very least, I do believe Troy Weaver should have been let go. Because the fact that that you have a centerpiece in Cade Cunningham, you're not really surrounding him with the right proper talent that's that's the right fit and adequate fit for his style of play and how he dictates things on the floor. You're not getting them the right amount of shooters. You're not getting, frankly, any shooters that you think of until after the trade deadline. Uh, you have players that make spacing so much of an issue. Uh, it doesn't help that you have a coach in Monty Williams who's supposedly this coach of the year type of coach, and yet he's making decisions like uh, keeping Jaden Ivey on the bench for as long as he did, being obsessed with Killian Hayes as long as he was until Killian was finally let go. So despite the fact that this was what now back-to-back years, consecutive years that the Pistons have had the worst year in the league. Who knows? Maybe that's lottery luck. Despite the fact that this 14-68 record is now the worst official mark in franchise history, there was still progress and still positives to celebrate. By the just based on the fact that there was development from the core. I've mentioned Jaden Ivey before. I'd be remiss to let you know that despite the fact that he started 61 out of a possible 77 games, which is comparable to the 73 out of 74 that he had done during his rookie year, he still put on averages, stats, metrics that's very much in line to what he was doing last year, if not a little bit better in a couple instances. For example, he had 17 blocks in his rookie season. This year, 41. Growth, development, becoming a defensive presence, using your length. The way he was that good defense, that defensive wing uh, during his days in Purdue. We're seeing it starting to slowly blossom here in Detroit for as long as it could possibly be, because you don't know how will he be as a potential building block, or will he be seen as a potential chip piece. The jury's still out on that, especially with the fact that we saw how Monty Williams' lack of using him might have played early on, might have played in how he was factor in how he was playing, but still, um, you have to see more from Jaden Ivey, assuming that he stays here in Detroit. Now, I did like what I saw from other players, such as Jalen Duren, who in his second season averaged officially a double-double with the average of 13.8 points, 11.6 rebounds. That's a double-double that he averaged for the entire season. You love to see that from your starting big man. Showed great durability out of a possible 61 games that he played. He started 60 of them. Major uptick in minutes and starter minutes compared to what he got last year. They have more trust and faith in them as being their starting five. And it's showing, especially the fact that, hey, this is a young big man that is making improvements with his free throws. Last year, he was only a 61% free throw shooter. This season from the charity stripe, he bumped it up to 79. It's a near 20% increase over the course of one season. So Duran, knowing what he brings to the table, the stats I just laid out for you, the fact that he is a perfect pick and roll partner with Cade, I would view him as the most important player of this core after Cade, this young core that you want to keep without shadow of a doubt. We can't still, of course, forget to mention other players like Asar Thompson, who, while yes, he has his shooting to work on. Yes, he had his season ended with blood clots. Still showed to me, at least in his limited time, however minute amount of games or minutes that he got throughout the season, what a potential defensive force that he could be, based on the fact that in this day and age where shooting and 3-point shooting is so predicated and depended upon and relied upon more than ever, you are going to have the need someone who has good perimeter defense, specifically if it's isolation defense, where you're one on one and you're around that 3-point line, perimeter line, that arc. Asar Thompson, as a rookie, in that specific metric, ranked in the top 10, number 6 to be specific. So the fact that we're seeing that out of him already at this young of age and at this early stage of his career is very promising. Again, assuming that he's not another one that's seen as potential chip piece, regardless of what decisions are made in the offseason. But there's other players, whether they found through the call-ups, where they made through trade deadlines, trade acquisitions, I should say. Marcus Sasser, Fontecchio. You saw the glimpses of what they could bring, bring to the table, whether it be side player or the bench guy coming up and making their minutes count. you could see that as a couple of players that can make a name for themselves here if given the opportunity. Overall, despite the fact that I just mentioned the horrible negatives, you know, it's still gonna be a very interesting offseason to see where they go in terms of A, who's gonna be the president of basketball operations, and B, what's gonna be their strategy with the draft, regardless of how the lottery comes through. Because C, this roster cannot look the same at all next year. There's got to be some major changes up and down, even if it means saying making some difficult choices regarding a couple of pieces.
Yep. And we're going to keep our eyes on that too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because when you have a player like Cade Cunningham, who, people want to make his jokes about it, make their jokes about him, saying, "Hey, what's he doing here? Are you sure he's supposed to be this worth this hype?" Despite all that, he still averaged 22, 4, and 7. Okay, that means that's career highs for him in points and assists. He also managed to set that off with in 3-point shooting with over 35%. Highest efficient field goal percentage shooting. He was maligned for much of the season with having issues with turnovers, but yet he still turned that into the best assist to turnover ratio of his career thus far. And if you notice, it seemed that throughout the course of the season, there may have been some instances where the refs actually did give Cade the benefit of the doubt and called fouls when there should have been fouls, because this was the most time that he had attempted free throws so far up to this point of his career,
Exactly.
as well as his best free throw percentage.
Mm-hmm.
So Cade is finding ways to get to the line, as I think it fits into his game much better that way that he should, as well as showing development with his jump shot and his outside game. So what you have in this player. You just got to surround him with the right supporting cast.
Exactly. So that's Pistons. So a couple Michigan Wolverines football stories to share.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, the football program itself as a whole has been placed on a 3-year probation, fined an indefinite amount of money, and they'll be facing recruiting restrictions for their recruiting violations during COVID-19.
Yeah, it's
So
interesting. It's interesting that they made some type of compromise. They admitted that there was a possible violation that they occurred under their watch, under Jim Harbaugh's watch specifically. But in turn, they got this deal to where, yeah, you'll be on probation, you'll be under watch from the NCAA for infractions of this regarding issue for the next 3 years, and you won't get the advantages in recruiting that you've had before. We're going to restrict that a little bit, and we're going to fine you some money. So I'm pretty sure that that'll probably be a drop in the bucket at this point for boosters and the university and merchandise sellers, considering the fact that they just won the national championship. They just beat Ohio State third year in a row. They just won the Big Ten third year in a row. So all that merch, all that booster money, and all that commitment and NIL deals and everything that should be popping up as a result of this, yeah, I'm sure they'll be fine making back that type of money. But as regards to what this means for other investigation or investigations, we don't know. We do know that this closes the gate essentially on the Burgergate deal, with this deal coming to light. But we don't know for anything if there's still pending word on how the investigation with the sign stealing and Connor Stallions is going to play out. There's also a chance that they might be looking into what Matt Weiss was doing that apparently is getting the attention of the FBI. So there's other elements that you still have to consider when you're looking at the scope of this one particular decision. So while Michigan has one ordeal that they can essentially put behind them, you still got a couple more hurdles way ahead of you.
exactly, and Weiss is likely the coach that's going to get nailed. It's not Stallions. This was because again, this was during COVID, the recruiting violations. It has nothing to do with the sign stealing scandal. So so that's already been agreed on. At least that's over with. Michigan's gonna just serve its own sentence or sentences. And speaking of which, former Michigan Wolverines quarterback Denard Robinson was arrested and then suspended indefinitely for the his arrest for operating while intoxicated in a car crash. And this is not the first time that he's been in an incident before. Denard Robinson was arrested when he was playing in the NFL. I think we lost Ed there, but Ed.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, Ed's.
Sorry, there was a slight technical issue with my microphone. You were discussing Denard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You pointed out off the air that it was not the first time he got in trouble. He's gotten into that kind of trouble before.
He had a similar incident back around in July 2016. This is when he was still in the NFL during his time in Jacksonville. Police had found him asleep in his car after he apparently drove it into a pond, and the car itself was submerged a bit. I don't know. Now, for some reason, no charges were ever brought against Denard as a result of that. It was determined that he was not impaired at the scene of that incident. I don't know how you can interpret that, but okay. This is not a bad look. Excuse me, I should rephrase that, please. This is not a good look at all. In fact, this is a bad look. Optics, especially to the fact that what you had to make your defensive line coach, Greg Scruggs, step down when his issue with driving under the influence came about. And now you're having this happen again to your staff within a relatively short amount of time, especially if this is someone who has had an apparent issue with being inebriated behind the wheel before. Now, I do appreciate the fact that Denard was suspended indefinitely. Would I be disappointed or surprised if this means he will not be, if it's soon to be announced that he will not be brought back under this staff or at least under his position? No, it would not surprise me because you've already set a precedent for what Greg Scruggs had to go through. And despite Denard, his status, his popularity, and everything else, standards are standards. And while it's disappointing and you hope for the best for Denard to get things right for his sake, I would not be in any objection whatsoever if at the end of this thing, whether it be this investigation or whether they decided, hey, the best course of action is if we and Denard just part ways. No complaints I would have about that at all.
No, absolutely not. And then finally, the Tigers, they actually, since they've, they started 5-1, as we talked about on our last episode. But since then, they won their home opening game against the Athletics 5-4, I think. But they lost the last two.
They had their peak, and then came the valley essentially. But again, at least the valley came against Oakland. I will say though that they did manage to find a way to bounce back when you consider that they split series respectively against the Pirates and the Twins.
Yeah, they split 2 games at PNC Park against the Pirates. They split 4 games at home against the Twins. They lost They lost both games in that doubleheader on Saturday. Game 1, Alex Lang did not fail. Well, he failed to throw more strikes than balls, but in the same 11th inning, Zach McKinstry committed a 3-run fielding error and then gave up a 3-run home run in the same inning to cap off a 7-run 11th inning for the Minnesota Twins. Twins won, I think 11-5, but then the Twins won 4-1 in game 2. But
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But the Tigers came back from down 3-0 on Sunday to win 4-3. And then the defending champs, the Texas Rangers, World Series champions, came into town. They won. They won the first game 1-0, but the Tigers came back to win 4-2. Tigers led 1-0, and then Texas took a 2-1 lead, and then the Tigers tied it back up, and then they scored 2 runs in the I think the 7th inning. Yes, yeah, the 8th inning actually. No, but yeah, the Tigers are 10-7 in third
Yes.
place in the American League's Comedy Central Division. But get this, the Cleveland Guardians are 12-5, leading the division, leading the AL Central. The Kansas City Royals, out of all teams, 11-6. The Minnesota Twins, 6-10, and of course the White Sox, 2-14. So it's like half comedy and half peak, I guess.
Yeah, it's
Guardians.
like I said, it's peaks and valleys. For every time that you may see a good pitching performance, like for example, a good surprise from Maeda of all people the other day, that gets balanced out by poor bullpen work, or you might see a good performance being shown up by Scooble, but he doesn't get enough runs for it. But hey, at least we got something for the other day against Minnesota by, again, another of all people thing that I'm saying. But I think it's significant when you consider that this was Javi Baez who made the difference in that Twins game by hitting that 8th inning home run. The fact that he acknowledged that he's been hearing the boos as well, that speaks to how he felt in that moment, in that element of hitting that home run for sure. I would hope it's motivation for him to probably light a fire under his ass, see if he can perform better, at least get above the damn Mendoza line, or stay above it, I should say. But we've seen this song and dance before. He literally saw it this last year, to where Javi was hearing boos. It was news. There was news reports about it. He said his comments about it. Tried to move on. You saw, hey, he looked good for about a couple of weeks, and then reality set back in. I doubt we're gonna see any type of sustained significant change from Javi and what he does from his approach at the plate for one, and how he gets hits. Number 2.
Yeah, he went 0-2 with a walk, at least a walk, but he's hitting 143 with a 374 OPS.
And the strikeouts are still there too.
Yep, of course. He struck out once too. That adds to it. One very ugly stat that I like to mention is Parker Meadows hitting .056 with a 320 OPS. Come on, Parker Meadows. Come on, you're a lot better than this.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jake Rogers, a 100 batting average of 382 OPS.
That's just flat out embarrassing.
Yeah. Even Wenzel Perez is hitting slightly better than both of them combined. 182 average and a 523 OPS. That's better than both Parker Meadows and Jake Rogers' averages combined, 156 if you add both of them up. And Zach McKinstry is still hitting 259. Went 1 for 3 today, a 603 OPS. He just can't. Zach McKinstry just at times can't field the ball cleanly, like he needs to. Like we need him to.
I know. I don't know if that's something mental going on for them or what, but hopefully he gets handled that as quickly as possible, because I've seen him make better plays than that, and I don't know what the heck that was that we saw against Minnesota.
Yeah, and Zach McKinstry's ERA is 54 flat after giving up that 3-run home run. Most of all, he can't. He sucks even worse at pitching than he does at fielding. and he's committed 2 errors on the season, both at third base.
Mm-hmm.
So what all did we learn in this episode?
We learned that the Red Wings still have room to grow. We learned that the Pistons need a complete overhaul in the worst way. We learned that for Michigan's sake, they have better get their own affairs in order unless they don't want to be seen as as an institution that has no institutional control. And the Tigers, it's just simple. You take this thing 1 week at a time because it's a long stretch. It's a marathon of a season. There's going to be peaks and valleys along the way. So you go with the flow, you go with the ride, and you hope things work out the best.
All right. So what I've learned, the Red Wings, again, as I said a while ago, nothing to worry about in terms of the playoff race, which is finally over with. They were not an elite Stanley Cup contender to begin with. They still have more work to do in the offseason, regardless whether they made the playoffs or not. And of course, the Pistons, they have a lot more work to do. Of course, Weaver and Monty are both staying put, but they need to build a lot more talent around Kate Cunningham, Jay Nivey, and Jalen Duren, and Marcus Sasser. And their offseason starts right now.
Yep. Please, it started weeks ago. Trust me.
Yep. Michigan is facing their punishments, but it won't affect their national championship. They've already won. And this was during the COVID-19 pandemic, and not during the sign stealing scandal. So it's not Stallions. It's just Weiss.
More than likely, we don't know
Exactly.
for sure though, which is it is a hypothetical guess, but that would be the one that would make sense to me.
Exactly. And then the Tigers, like you mentioned, they've hit their valley, and they end up in third place in the American League Central Division behind the Guardians and Royals out of all teams, and it shows why there's no guarantee, especially from people like Chris Castellani, that the Tigers are going to win the AL Central.
No, there's still like I said, it's a 162 game season for a reason.
Exactly. So that's what we've learned, and that's another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast in the can. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Ed Smith. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Michigan_Truth, and like its Facebook page. Subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Like our videos and turn on all notifications on the bell icon. Follow it and listen to it in audio form on Spreaker. Follow me on X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at DT2Phillips. Follow Ed Smith on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitch at EdSmith313, and on YouTube at EdSmith313. Business shout-outs go to Athletico Physical Therapy on Woodward and Ferndale, the B4 Foundation, Cali Tickets. Call Mark Goldman at 877-225-8425 or visit CaliTickets.com. Creative Embroidery of Cadillac for designing the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast logo on my long-sleeve shirt and T-shirt. Cuts by Melanie in Lake City, the JC Youth Foundation. Let's Roll With It Rolled Ice Cream in Cadillac. Follow them on TikTok at The Food Mafia and on Instagram at The Food Mafia Rolled Ice Cream. No flavor of the week because the owners are on vacation this week. Northern Star Event Rentals in Cadillac, 231-884-8195, and on Facebook. Bookings are going fast already, so book yours right now. Union Barber in Birmingham, United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan, United Mobile Power Wash and Dry Ice Works in Southfield, and Wellbeing with Catherine Palms. So I'll be back in a week or two. But for now, for Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips signing off. But remember, we observe and detect the truth about sports in the state of Michigan because the truth is out there. Hit them with a hind. Ta-ta for now.
Take care and be safe, everyone.
Power to the people.